Hello. Hi, everyone. I think we're just started as I have a message. So, hi, everyone. Let me know if you can see me. I'm smiling to the camera for the last 15 minutes, and it would be great if I can have some feedback. So that would be great if you can just tell me if you can see my screen nicely and is the quality good. Hello, hello. Oh, great. Hi, Kasia. Okay, so let's begin. Um so I don't talk to myself. It's really, really funny having a conference speech in 2020 because you talk basically speaking to yourself. And let me start sharing my screen so we can roll on. Okay, so I will be talking today about using AI in HR on examples from our own company, Talent Alpha, where we use it to build profiles on specialists. And we will be sharing a lot of knowledge that we found on our way, and also a couple of things like what can you use to do it, how can you do it, and why would you do it. But also for everyone, which is very important from my perspective, that we are entering a new era in HR, and that affects everyone because we are as a specialists, we are hired by companies, we work in the companies, and we're also analyzed in the companies, which I will be talking in a second about. For those who don't know me, I'm the CTO of Talent Alpha, Wojtek, and I had a pleasure with working with multiple large companies on data insight projects. Nobody called it data science at the time. We just had fun with numbers, a lot of numbers and mathematical models. So crazy times like 10, 15 years ago. And at the moment I joined, it's a year since I joined Talent Alpha. I'm leading the team and the product behind it and the strategy of the product. And of course, I'm specialized mainly in AI, but also I love mixing AI and UX. So if you want to talk to me about these two topics, that would be great. Talent Alpha is a platform for companies to manage their tech talents and hire for tech talents. So I won't be spending too much time on that because you will see a number of things how we can apply different techniques to do it. And if you're happy to talk about Talent Alpha, just ping me or my friends on LinkedIn. We'll be happy to chat with you about it. So we will be talking about specialists, technology specialists only today, and how we can use AI to map their skills, to analyze the teams, etc., etc. But the whole topic of AI is so much broader, I would say. So you need to understand that there's so much we can do. And why should you care as a specialist about the HR and AI? Um, First of all, there is there is a thing called tech talent gap, and we all, I think, know about it from different perspectives, right? So a lot of companies have problems with hiring for tech talents, and a lot of companies will have issues and very long timings to get the talent from the market. And we as a specialists, we're contacted and bombarded actually with zillions of offers. So that's a very big problem. And the forecast from the Future of Jobs reports by World Economic Forum was that we are lacking 133 million jobs in the next following 4 years. We're in the middle of that period. So that's a lot on a global scale. And I would argue that actually with the COVID, it started and maybe even emphasized the need of the digital transition, which basically speaking means more and more companies need to invest in IT, in the software, in automatization, etc., etc. The result is we need even more talents than ever before. So that's very, very important. And the last report, Jobs of Tomorrow, which is very interesting, and I do encourage you to have a look at it, also predicted what are the fields that we're missing, the tech specialists. So it's a great read. If you want to know about your future as a specialist, if you want to know about the future of the IT market, I do encourage you looking at this. This is both are really excellent and a great report. So just concluding on that, I just wanted to say that emphasize a couple of pinpoints that the financial impact is really huge, and the IT so-called talent gap is only growing at the moment, and there is a need for more talent. It results in the fact that it's much harder for us to start projects, to maintain them, maintain the momentum. And for companies, if we take all of that into consideration, it means that it's a much harder market, and there is a need of a new approach to think about how you create software solutions in the future. And the market itself is huge. We're talking about a multi-billion market. If you take into considerations that number of specialists missing, and you well understand the value of these software projects, that we're talking about multi-billion market, and this is something completely new. We haven't had that in the past. I mean, we had the talent gap. It wasn't that big, and I said the COVID only just make it even bigger. So we never were impacted by these problems on that scale. Another great report that I would love you to have a look at is a Gartner's report, Future of Work Trends Post-COVID report. That's a very interesting read. So as I said, there are proofs already that the digital transformation or just were made more important, and we will need only just make sure that we have all of the tech skills to do this. And I think you've been into situations like this. I certainly was, where you couldn't do something with a company because it was, for example, locked down and they couldn't operate remotely or digitally, etc., etc. So this is the things which are impacted. There is another part of the puzzle. For the companies that already have IT talents, there is a series of new challenges that they will be facing. For instance, one of them will be that how to manage talents in the remote world with so many people. One of our partners, the companies that we work with, shared with us the numbers that usually for one position they had up to 50 candidates and 50 resumes and profiles to analyze. When they opened globally for remote workers, they started to get, for example, 500 or even 5,000 profiles to analyze with the same amount of people, with the same amount of with the same type of technologies behind them. So from actually hiring, through managing in a new way, remote, out of the office, everything is changing on our eyes. And I just quickly Googled for a couple of examples how it all changes and how it all shifts at the moment. And all of the companies are having the same problems, though I would say very different approaches. For instance, you have some screenshots of a Google article, the Apple's article, or for example the Netflix articles on how CEOs saw it. And you can see that, for instance, on the screenshots, not everyone was so positive about the fact that the whole company is going remote. I wanted you to just stop and think about the one that is from our own Polish market. One of the interviews, which was very important and very interesting from my perspective. It's with CEO of Comarch. You can find it easily. It's an interview published on Business Insider, and Janusz Filipiak, the CEO, said that he doesn't believe in remote work. He believes that the company productivity will be hit, etc., etc. Well, taking on the side the discussion about the leadership, the management, etc., etc., he said one interesting thing, that they have all of the tools and they will use all of the tools that are at their hand to actually control every single bit and byte what the employees are doing during the work when they're remote. If you think that's a lot of data, and a lot of these tools will be AI aided, AI probably driven even. So the problem that I see is also from the ethical point of view, what are we going to do here? So that's a very interesting topic, and you can see it's already here. The problem is already here. We just maybe not all of us we see that, and we actually know that. So I wanted to just conclude all of these saying it's the problems are here, the opportunities are also here, and the whole situation of remote work, etc., it started to make it so complex, so complicated with so much data, and everyone is looking at the artificial intelligence. How can help you with analysis, with the team analytics, with productivity analysis, etc., etc. So very interesting topics here, and I do encourage you to stop and think, maybe even hear about that. So in order to build an IT company, in order to build new software projects, we need to recruit, manage, and grow our talents, right? We don't want to actually people just to join our companies. We want to grow them. We want them to learn with our company. The problem is the processes are really old, I would say. They completely out of this century even, because most of them are based on CVs. So that's a very interesting problem that we came across. A lot of companies require CVs to work with to start actually the recruitment process. And CV, I wanted to with you look at the CVs and the very interesting parts of that, how we actually start the recruitment process and how it affects then everything. And coming back, we're not having a scale of, for example, 5 to 15 CVs to analyze. We're having now the problem, if we're open for remote work, of analyzing hundreds of them. So how can you do that? Well, AI to the rescue, right? But it's a very big problem. And I found that actually working with CVs, and I wanted to share a couple of findings with you on how you can use AI to analyze documents like CVs. It's one of the hardest NLP problems that we encountered, because CV is a very interesting document. So I would just wanted to warn you, I have some examples for you, but of how CVs can be weird. So that's a typical CV. Really nice to analyze, right? There is a product that the person used, a list of products that that person used, a list of tech skills. There is a really nice list of projects with the tech stacks, etc., etc. When you analyze that, you can extract a lot of very valuable information. But on the other hand, you can have CVs like that. And it's really hard to actually understand what is the proficiency of that person, if that person used that skills, how, and what it who can do what with these skills, etc., etc. And even if we somehow manage to do it, a lot of CVs, and I mean a lot of CVs, because we're seeing hundreds, if not thousands, of CVs, are having this particular strange scale of, for example, graphical representation. I'm 5 out of 7 of MySQL. Okay, what does it mean? What does it mean to you? What does it mean to me? Etc. Etc. So we have a lot of these problems. So we found that actually parsing CVs and working on documents is a very hard topic, because, for example, if you work with invoices, the invoice, at least, even if they're graphically different, they will have certain parts of this document that you know that you have to look for. Like, for example, a selling company, a buying company, a product that was bought or sold, a price without the tags, with the tags and the tags, etc., etc. So you can actually teach something to look for these different parts of the document. Whereas in CVs, you don't have any standards. So we're entering a territory of of NLP that there are no standards at all. And funnily enough, there is a very good AI solution in the cloud. Google released, I think, a month or maybe 2 months ago, an API, experimental API that can be used for parsing documents, and it really fails on CVs. It's really good for invoices, for instance, which only shows it's a very tough topic on that scale. So I will show you a couple of things you can do actually to attack that problem if it sounds familiar. On, for example, you may have some similar problems. So the problem is that we're hire specialists using documents that are totally out of this century and are not parsable on the very large scale. They need a lot of human interaction. They actually require people to read them, then put that data into some different formats, etc., etc. And then you can maybe, as a team leader who is hiring, have a list of people. I don't know, maybe in Excel in some companies or in HR systems, you can actually look and think, okay, I want Yannick. He's looking good, right? So this is definitely not scalable problem. We have another medium on the internet that you can use for hiring, which is called LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is a very interesting platform that when I started to look at from a perspective of a person who is hiring, or for example, who is being hired, or just is posting, for example, job offers. I wanted to make sure that I understand the whole flow. And for me, it was amazing with such a big community. This is, for example, a full profile, LinkedIn profile, right? And of our CEO. And what is interesting from my perspective, with having that vast amount of data and a vast amount of users to begin with, LinkedIn has almost no standards in making sure that this data is really good quality to, when it comes to working with it and making some kind of smarter decisions. An example can be skills and endorsements. To begin with, you can only have 50 skills and endorsements on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn isn't that smart. When LinkedIn, and I wanted to show you an example of a job offer. Here is a engineering manager Google Cloud Platform. LinkedIn doesn't parse the text, for example, that Google pasted here, looking for skills that are required. It doesn't ping interesting for Google people, just making, for example, this offer and an advert that is displayed to these people, so it gains momentum. It doesn't even help the recruiter. We also tried that as well. And for example, from your perspective, to begin with, it doesn't help you with landing that job and understanding how you actually fit to that position. It's almost like paper magazine with job offers, with a paper job bulletin. So here's, for example, how I see that offer. If I pay a lot of money, actually, because it's I think £40 a month, around 44 euros a month, if you want to be recruited. How I see that, and funnily enough, this analysis is not built on analyzing the text and the offer, or maybe even some surveys about the job from Google. I am being analyzed against different people. And I wanted to highlight, for example, the skills that we discussed just a couple of minutes ago. These are analyzed against other people to begin with, not against, for instance, a job offer. So maybe Google doesn't need, for example, Scrum or project management or requirement analysis. People who are applying for this job do have these skills listed, and I'm actually having the same. Funny enough, I was working a lot with databases, and it doesn't recognize I have a SQL skill, because, for example, a skill that is called A is not LinkedIn didn't create the taxonomy of skills, and it doesn't have a connection. For example, the SQL is somehow connected to MySQL or, for example, Oracle, etc., etc. So it's very interesting how little, with that number of users, of that number of amount of data, companies like this are doing. So just showing this these two problems, I wanted to show you that biggest players in the market there are may actually have some services for you. Like LinkedIn does have a LinkedIn recruiter, but it's really dumb, and they make you pay a lot for these services. So there is definitely a space to make something much smarter here, we believe. So I have a question to you. Think about the last job offer you posted as a company, as a team leader or as an HR person, and think of what it contained. What is the title of the offer, and how you describe the job, how you describe the responsibilities. Think also, if you did the research against your, for example, competition or companies that look for alike specialists. So, for example, if you were looking for a JavaScript developer, did you check how other companies are hiring for a JavaScript developer? What are the descriptions, etc., etc., etc. This is a very interesting from a AI data analytics, AI and NLP fields perspective problem. So think about that for a second. And I wanted to show you one other problem that we have as a whole industry that affects everyone that we found very quickly. We are hiring for roles, and that's a very interesting problem. So think you definitely used a role in your job offer. I mean, in most cases you do. You even seen the Google's job offer. It was a very certain role that they hired for. But the problem is, when we hire for roles, they're very easily they don't have any standards, and they can be very easily mistaken. And some of the roles are super broad. For example, a full stack developer, it can mean pretty much anything, right? Even a Java developer, and we'll have an example in a moment. It can be a very broad description of responsibilities in the end, and the role the role that person will be playing in the project. Just to show you how strange these problems are, I found you another example of the Google architect job offer from a company from Washington, D.C. That was very interesting from my perspective, because one of your responsibilities will be to create a large, highly optimized solutions on AWS. So if you have a pro tool that is, for example, crawling for job roles and proposing if you are looking for a job as a Google Cloud architect, for instance, in this case, you might be surprised what you will do in your first on your first day in your new job, right? Because probably you haven't anticipated that. Especially when you read the rest of the offer, it's really strange. Now, I promise you to think about the roles in the different contexts. So I have another task for you. Imagine a Java developer. You can do pretty much anything else, like PHP developer or, for example, JavaScript developer. What is the closest to you? And I wanted to show you how different these are when we actually think in details about them, and where is the problem with thinking with roles, which is very interesting from a data analytics perspective. This is Yannick. And Yannick told us that actually he's using a couple of libraries like Spring, Hibernate, and Jog. And another Yannick in another world is using Hadoop, Kafka, and Spark. He's also a Java developer, by the way. Another Yannick, who's also a Java developer in another world, is using JBehave, Cucumber, and Mockito. And another one is using Kotlin, Eric's Java 2 and Android, for instance. And another one is using React, Redux, and REST. So who are they? They're definitely not Java developers, or maybe there are Java developers, all of them at the same time, but definitely they can be something else as well. So for instance, we're talking about big data engineer or a QA engineer, system architect, or mobile developer, et cetera, et cetera. A very interesting problem from my perspective. And if you were working with data analytics and machine learning and NLP, you can already see there is a lot of potential in actually building the taxonomy of all of the skills and having clusters of skills that create these roles as we understand them, approximation of these roles. So with this example of a Java developer and different types of skills that you actually possess as a Java developer, resulting in different roles actually from different perspective, we think that basically speaking, it's like thinking of roles in IT. It's like thinking of music, and think of that. If I ask you what is rock music, if you listen to that, or maybe jazz or hip hop or whatever you listen to, you will give me probably a list of examples of what you think that music is. That's exactly, for example, how Spotify would will onboard you and build first list of your music. It won't ask you what is the music that you like. Oh, I'm listening to whatever, jazz, right? And it will play exactly the jazz I wanted to. It will ask you about the for example, songs that you like or artists that you like, and that it will build your imagination of the music itself. And we thought this is very inspiring. And we want to use exactly the same approach to the problem of building the taxonomy of skills, the taxonomy of roles, et cetera, to start to actually build the big HR analytics tool. So just concluding that part, I just wanted to show you that the roles, and we're hiring with the roles, especially with that. If you're a team leader, and between you and the specialist that is hired, there is also your boss, HR department, HR specialist, etc., etc. There is a very big probability that you won't actually get that role right and the list of responsibilities. So how we wanted to approach that? But we thought that there is a specialist perspective, and in the meaning that me as a Java developer is actually a lot of what I think I do as a Java developer, right? So, for instance, surveys, tests, maybe analysis of my code, etc., etc., will give me my view of what I do and what is my role. Also, there is a hiring manager perspective, a very interesting, very different perspective, because that's what market thinks of the roles and how market hires. These are, for example, job offers and how they're being described. And a lot of tools are focusing on this perspective only. There is a third perspective, because as you think about that, both are really biased. Let's say I'm 20 years on the IT market. I think of the Java development from my perspective, even if after 20 years, it's only the projects that I've seen. It's only the teams that I worked with that built my understanding of what is Java developer and what is the IT market. So it's really biased. On the other hand, it's exactly the same with the companies. So what is the grand truth? And we thought it's actually technologies providers' perspective. So in order to understand really, we have to have this whole picture in order to understand the IT market and the IT skills. So specialist perspective, hiring manager's perspective, and the technology provider. If you are successful with this approach, you can start do really nice things. Like, for example, map all of your existing team skills, have a really broad analysis and understanding what are your skills, basically speaking, that exist in your company. And then you can think of questions like, if I would like to do X, like for instance, move from AWS to Google Cloud, what skills do I have in my team? What skills am I missing? And then you can hire exactly for the right skills, not the roles. So this is really important. So I wanted to share with you a couple of learnings that we have from our POCs and the projects that we were running with our partners. One of them is what we call the skill graphs and skill to vec. A training data set, it was very modest. We were actually working on a much bigger data set at the moment. It was 2,000 full profiles with all of the education, all of the projects, technology stacks, etc., etc. And then we use also 12,000 job offers. And there is a couple of learnings that there is. You need to apply a lot of normalization, right? There will be tons of mistakes. or different ways that people look at the same technology skills, etc., etc. Second, there is a set of what we call the common skills that are very common in IT, and a lot of roles possess them, that if you leave them in your data set will bias your data set. It can be, for example, Git or Python. So if we have a number of these skills in our data set, they would definitely bias the model, and they would definitely bias the answers. And we used WordVec, which was already good. But I do recommend, if you have a problem like that, if you want to approach a problem like that, there is a paper called Node to Vec from Stanford University, which we're playing at the moment, which gives a very promising results. To begin with, I should say, if you're into AI or data science, you need to read a lot of papers. I mean, pretty much every problem, virtually any problem, was approached already by someone, and there was a paper published on it, and there is so many techniques that you can use, and you need to gain that knowledge. So definitely look for something like, for example, papers with code. When it comes to CV parsing and using them, our approach was actually create NERS, so name entity recognition models. We're playing with number of approaches, some of them complex. And we have a data set that we annotated for a number of data points, like, for example, skills, the roles, the industries, the education, certifications, etc., etc. And we want to build the taxonomy and the patterns and, for example, the connections between all of them, to be much smarter when it comes to, so whatever the CV will be thrown at us, we would like to extract some meaningful data. I think we have some time for the demo. Very quickly, I wanted to show you how it can work, but I have this problem with screen sharing. So it doesn't recognize that I have two screens, so you may see for a second a very strange effect. So 1 second, you will probably see my screen. So 1 second. Hi everyone. So we will be sharing screen for a moment. Okay. So basically speaking, here is, for example, a skills to VEC, our model. And I can, it's a notebook for those of you who don't know it. This environment is a notebook, and basically speaking, it contains all of the steps from taking the data set, training the models, choosing the balance model, etc., validating them, etc. And at the end, I added just a couple of demos for you to show you that it's live. So I'm exactly, for example, here is one of the models that we're using, that taking a couple of skills will tell you what are the other skills are very likely for this specialist to possess. A very interesting question, a very important question. So for example, I took here Java, Hibernate, and Docker, and these are the skills that this specialist will very likely possess. If I can ask different questions, for example, PHP, MySQL, Redis, Docker, but I know that person doesn't possess MongoDB and Python. And this is the set of skills that we're getting. Add the same couple of other examples. So here is the skills to VAC, and here is our node to VAC model. So here is an example. I started with Java. Then these are the skills that our model told us that very likely this person will possess. Then I asked about Java, Hibernate, and Docker. There's a Java, Spark, and Kafka. So sounds like a big data engineer, for instance, without Spring and JPA. And here is a list of skills that this person will very likely possess. It's very interesting because it shows you that if a lot of Azure coming out here, it's very likely that in our data set, all of these specialists who possess Java, Spark, and Kafka but doesn't possess Spring and JPA are coming from Microsoft background technology. So very interesting finding. And pretty much the same with the that I showed you on skill to VEC. So node to VEC is definitely working. It was giving much better results. I will very quickly switch back to our presentation. So sorry for that. If you're interested in other models and how they work, how they are connected, just ping me. I'll be very glad to talk about that. I wanted to show you also the other thing, and we'll be sharing the screen again in a second. Which is, okay, we have a number of models. Maybe we even created services that can do something, how they can go on the production, and what does it mean to the user, to the specialist. And here is an example of something we worked on. So the problem from our perspective, from the specialist perspective, is definitely it's another profile that I need to create. It's another page with data I need to put in, et cetera, et cetera. And we thought, we're smart enough to actually onboard a specialist very, very quickly. So if he's in a recruitment process, we can make a lot of the assumptions and target him with the right set of tests that are tailored for him. And here is how you can do it. So for example, for instance, we ask that person, there is it's actually a functionality that is being built at the moment. It will be available on our platform within a couple of weeks. So how it works, this is the UI. In the background, what is happening here? We're asking, for example, what were your areas of engagement with the project, right? And let's say Yannick has chosen DevOps, engineering, and cloud, being a cloud specialist. And in the background, there is a lot of going on. We make this set of skills that Yannick very likely possesses. And then we ask another question, for example, what were you working on? What are you, for example, what are the responsibilities, or for example, areas of the project, industry? We're asking about industries, et cetera, et cetera. And we build, and we're starting to narrow very, very quickly the set of skills that Yannick possesses. And within 5 to 6 screens, where we can build 5 to 6 screens with a couple of questions each. We can very easily build a very accurate image of Yannick's skills. So this is really promising. So a very quick couple of taps or clicks onboarding, and then just producing the tests and surveys that are tailored for Yannick, and then he can just go with the recruitment process, et cetera, et cetera. Or for example, if his manager wants to better understand what are the strong sides of his character. There are a couple of other things that you can do with HR and AI. We just quickly scroll through them. We're also doing psychometrics. It's another big data set that is very promising. So for example, Big Five, we're also doing it. The type of the thinking, et cetera, we're also doing that as well. And other platforms as well. Job satisfaction. So for example, asking the specialists, are they happy with the project, but also asking their teammates as well. So a lot of that stuff. I just wanted to quickly scroll to show you this. However, maybe even groundbreaking it sounds to you, this is already happening, and there are tools on the market that are being used, and a lot of companies are already using this set of tools in the recruitment process and in their management processes. And here are the number of tools that are there on the market. And there are a couple of challenges. Legality of scraping. I would just quickly browse that. It's a very interesting problem if you're starting to build a project like that. Is you really need to understand, is that legal to get all of that data, or do I need, for example, the person's consent to get that data in his name, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing, and I wanted to stop here, is if you're doing decisions based on these tools, or if you're making these tools, I would say be humble, guys, because it's human beings that we're making decisions on, and these tools are really stupid sometimes, and they make a lot of mistakes. It's a very new field, and I cannot stress enough how I would discourage you to just get the data set and go with just off the shelf solution like AutoMLs, God forbid, et cetera, because there are so many biases, so many things that you will just forget about. So never do that, please. And it's when you're working on tools like that, understand the cognitive biases that you're targeted with. Here's a great list of them. Another great lesson from my perspective, and thing that you have to understand is there's a great book if you're into the topic called All Data Are Local. Is it will show you that it's always there is a context to the data always, and there will be so much hidden behind the data, and you cannot describe the full picture. And I will come back. We're talking about human beings, especially when it comes to hiring or making decision about the specialist. This is really, really risky territory. I will show you an example. There is a platform, AI platform, the whole cloud platform called IBM Watson. And it has a very interesting ingredient called personal insights, which basically speaking can get the text written by a person and produce the analytics. There is a demo, Google for it. Definitely, please go and do that. And you can put your Twitter handle to get your tweets analyzed. And it will produce I would say quite accurate image of who you are. But look what happened. It analyzed my Twitter for only 3,800 words, and it started to produce this image of me. And I would say I don't agree with everything. Furthermore, I would say I had a professional Big Five test certified done, and it's very different. So this tool is definitely biased. It's definitely limited. But I know that there are companies there who are making decisions using such a tool. And there is a great paper and the article of human rights implications of using such a tools for the processes. Of what are the risks? So I definitely do encourage you to have a look at it. This is a very interesting topic. So just have fun. Okay, concluding all of that, I just wanted to say that whatever you do, whoever you are in your organization, HR and AI is definitely the future, and you will see a much more appliances of these technologies, whether you are team leader, whether you're hiring, etc., etc. So it's a very, very interesting topic, and it will be here. And COVID just only just speeded up the revolution, I would say. And if you are a team manager, if you are an HR person, if you're building such tools, be humble and always be mindful of what you're doing. This is a very, very risky territory for us. We're making decisions not about what kind of holidays should I buy. We're making decisions on, for instance, is that person performing well or not, and whatever we do with that, etc., etc. afterwards. Maybe that person is in trouble, and you need to actually dig deeper, etc., etc. And if you're building such a tools, always be humble. You cannot know everything, and you won't. So with that, I want to thank you for all of that, spending the last 45 minutes. Hopefully it was interesting for you. So many topics. I'm really excited about the stuff that we're working on. If you have any questions at all, just shoot at me. You will find me on LinkedIn and Twitter. You won't find me on Facebook. I don't have a Facebook, but definitely you can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter, and I will very happily answer any of your questions. So I really wanted to thank you for spending this afternoon with me, and hopefully see you in person on one of the conferences, and whatever in the real world we can meet. So yeah, if you have any questions, I will be here for a number of minutes. So shoot me. I will go through the chat. I see a number of questions, so probably I will answer them in direct messages. So I think it's the time. So thank you all. Stay healthy.